The update that dropped this Thursday about Lamar Jackson hit everyone like a punch to the gut. And it's not an exaggeration to say it could completely change what the Ravens expect heading into Sunday's matchup. And the reason behind it is already making a lot of people nervous. And the craziest part is that this isn't some random one-time thing. What happened today set off a massive warning sign. And the more details come out, the more this whole situation looks different than people thought. There's something serious behind this update, and you need to understand exactly what's going on. Lamar Jackson missing Thursday's practice instantly made things tense in Baltimore. And it's not just because the Steelers are up next. It's because this kind of absence has turned into a pattern. He was limited on Wednesday with an ankle issue, and the very next day, he couldn't do pretty much anything. For a quarterback known for energy and explosion, seeing him like this naturally gets everyone uneasy. Things get even heavier when you remember what happened on Thanksgiving night against the Bengals. Lamar didn't look like himself, turned the ball over 3 times, and walked off the field visibly frustrated. That already set off alarms, but now, with another practice missed, that alarm gets even louder. When your franchise quarterback can't practice, the whole preparation flips upside down because the offense depends on what he physically can or can't do. And the real issue goes beyond this week. This was Lamar's 4th straight missed practice. And at this point, it's hard not to see the pattern. He tries to go, shows up limited, and then gets pulled off the field. For a player whose game depends so much on explosiveness, practice rhythm matters a ton. Without it, the offense loses timing, chemistry, confidence. And that leaves one big question hanging in the air. How is he supposed to step into such a physical rivalry game without a full week of preparation? With all this happening at once, the ankle bothering him, recent mistakes, missed practices, Lamar becomes the center of every concern in Baltimore. And when you look closer, you realize the situation didn't just show up out of nowhere. It's been lingering for weeks and has a very clear starting point that explains why he hasn't been able to stay fully healthy. Lamar's absence this Thursday wasn't some isolated event, and honestly, that might be the scariest part of all this. He's been dealing with physical issues for over 2 months, and it's basically become part of the Ravens' weekly routine. After that hamstring injury at the end of September, the one that cost him 3 games, he never really looked fully comfortable again. Every week it's something new, a limitation, a tweak, a missed practice. It feels like his body is constantly making him pay for something. And the longer this drags on, the more it shows up on the field. Lamar tries, pushes through, gives everything he can, but the mobility that usually defines his game just hasn't been the same. When a quarterback relies that much on movement, even the smallest issue, ankle, hamstring, anything, changes everything. It's not just about pain. It's about confidence, timing, burst, all the things that make Lamar look like Lamar. What makes this even more concerning is how those physical limitations spill into preparation. If he can't practice, he can't rep the game plan, can't build rhythm with receivers, can't adjust protections. That affects way more than just him. It affects the entire offense. In some ways, the team is preparing in the dark every week because they don't know which version of Lamar is actually going to show up on Sunday. That kind of uncertainty hits every part of the operation. With so many warning signs piling up, it's clear Lamar's physical issues didn't start this week. They've been building since September. And when you match all these limitations with the stretch the team was going through, you start to understand how much he had to carry even when the body wasn't cooperating. And that's exactly what leads into the next point, how he still managed to drag the Ravens back into contention even while playing on fumes. Even limping, limited, and nowhere near 100%. Lamar Jackson became the main piece in dragging the Ravens back into the fight. After that chaotic 1-5 start, he had to show up, had to keep this team afloat, and he did. They climbed to 6-5 and forced themselves back into the AFC North conversation, and that happened only because Lamar was out there pushing through everything. It's honestly wild to think about how much he did while clearly not being anywhere close to his best. But recovering like this takes more out of a player than people realize. Every game becomes a physical battle. Every practice becomes extra effort, and every week weighs heavier than the one before. When a quarterback is healthy, he naturally carries the team. When he's hurting, He has to carry himself first just to be able to carry everyone else. And that drains you. Lamar did that for weeks and helped keep the Ravens alive long enough to claw back into the race. But football has no mercy when it comes to physical demands. As the season kept rolling, the Ravens hit their ups and downs, and Lamar did too. Last week's loss lit the fuse again in the division, which is now completely up for grabs. Every team is one slip away from chaos, and one win away from first place. And in a moment like that, the weight on the quarterback only grows, because everyone knows Baltimore is a different team when Lamar is healthy. And that's where the inevitable comparison comes in. Even with everything happening right now, Lamar has always played well against the Steelers, especially last season. And that contrast between the Lamar who dominated Pittsburgh and the Lamar fighting through pain today makes this upcoming matchup even more intriguing.
All right, we're already past the halfway point of this video, but before we continue, I noticed you haven't left a like yet. It's really important because it helps YouTube keep showing you my content so I can keep bringing you the best news about the Baltimore Ravens. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free and it really helps. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
The most interesting and honestly the most confusing part of this entire storyline is how different today's Lamar looks compared to the Lamar who faced the Steelers last season. Last year, he was sharp. He won 2 of 3 matchups against Pittsburgh, including the wild card game, and threw 6 touchdown passes across those meetings. Whenever he needed to raise a level, he did. Whenever things tightened up, he responded. That was a confident, aggressive Lamar, fully in command of the offense. And it wasn't just his arm. He had Derrick Henry running like a tank behind him, giving the Ravens offense a physical presence that wore down every defense in front of them. In that playoff win, Henry ran for 186 yards and 2 touchdowns, and just 4 weeks earlier he had dropped 162 more on the Steelers. Lamar took advantage of all of it, got the offense rolling, and led with total confidence. That was a balanced, physical, efficient attack, everything Baltimore dreams of recreating. But this season looks nothing like that. Now Lamar heads into the rivalry dealing with pain, lacking practice rhythm, and coming off a game full of mistakes. The run game doesn't have the same punch, and the entire team feels heavier. So the big question isn't whether he knows the Steelers. He knows them better than almost anyone. The question is which version of Lamar will show up on Sunday, the dominant one from last year or the limited, physically battered version we've seen lately? And that question matters even more when you remember how Ravens-Steelers games almost always play out. Tight physical, decided in tiny details. And in those details, a quarterback's physical condition changes everything. That's why the build-up to this game keeps circling back to the same point. Which Lamar Jackson will actually be on the field? With everything that's piled up these last few weeks, Lamar Jackson ends up at the center of every conversation before this showdown with the Steelers. He comes in limping, after missing another practice, after a game with 3 turnovers, and after weeks of physical limitations that never let up. When one player carries this much responsibility, every detail about his health completely shifts the team's expectations. The toughest part for the Ravens is preparing without clarity. They need a plan with Lamar healthy, a plan with Lamar limited, and even a plan without him if the ankle doesn't respond. That creates instability, where every lost rep matters and every adjustment has to come fast. For a team that depends on rhythm and timing, that kind of uncertainty hits hard, and it becomes even harsher when the opponent is the franchise's biggest rival. And of course, the standings only add more pressure. The AFC North is wide open, and every win or loss shifts the entire picture. Lamar has always been the emotional spark of this team. When he's strong, Baltimore plays loose and confident. When he's limited, everything feels tight and heavy. And that contrast is exactly why the entire city is basically holding its breath waiting for any update on his ankle. In the end, everything comes down to one question hanging in the air. How is Lamar Jackson going to show up on Sunday? That answer could change the game, the division, and maybe even the direction of the Ravens' entire season. At the end of the day, Lamar Jackson's situation this Thursday makes one thing clear. This moment is too serious to ignore. He missed practice again. He's still fighting through physical limitations. And he heads into the division's biggest game surrounded by questions that could reshape the Ravens season. This whole run of pain, turnovers, and lack of rhythm created a scenario nobody expected at this point, especially with the AFC North completely wide open. And now comes the big question. Will Lamar be able to take the field the way Baltimore needs him to? That answer might define more than a game. It might define where this team goes from here. So buckle up, because the next few hours are about to shake up the entire week in Baltimore.
And if you, just like me, are passionate about the world of football and want to learn more about the Ravens' legacy, don't leave this video without sharing it with that friend who is also a Baltimore Ravens fan and will love this content. See those video suggestions on your screen? The first one was handpicked just for you, and the other is a recommendation from YouTube itself.